right, it is time for what I've been watching slash last 5 movies I've watched. It says films. Some of these are films, some of these are movies. I'm not gonna super get into that, but we will get into these titles. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I am back with another What I've Been Watching Recently video. I don't know if that's what I've called these. Sorry, I just decided to kind of do this on the fly when I noticed I actually had finished 5 films, which tends to be when I tend to do these sort of like mini wrap-up situations. And so these are spoiler-free discussions on some films I've seen recently. So let's get this party started. I do have 5, and I watched most of these in October or just before October, so they do tend to be on the spookier side of things. Although the first one I would go more with atmospheric, and that is The Lighthouse. So this is directed by Robert Eggers, and I didn't know that going in. I just knew the casting, and I had seen the poster, and I had had lots of friends talk about this one and mention it in a positive manner, and it just looked amazingly gorgeous, atmospheric. The casting is Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, and it's pretty much them throughout the entire film, and they are the new lighthouse tenders on this small island. Willem Dafoe plays the old hand. Robert Pattinson is new to this. The power dynamic between them is intense, and it is dark and creepy, and the tension is high. It's also gorgeous and atmospheric and completely disturbing, but like check out, like, that's just like, it's really intense. Like, it really is, it's almost like watching a play in a lot of ways, because it really is just two people and you just see it start to just wear each other down. So this is not a movie I would recommend to everyone, because I would say that it goes some pretty disturbing places. There are some things that I mentioned that I'm not going to mention that I didn't know about it going in, and then they sort of came to light, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But as I mentioned, I didn't know it was directed by Robert Eggers. I'm kind of glad that I didn't know that, because if I did, I probably would have maybe not watched it. He also directed The Witch, which I'm on the unpopular opinion side of things, because I really didn't like that. Do I agree that it's a gorgeous, historical, atmospheric, creepy movie? Yes, but I really didn't enjoy it for other reasons. So much so that I actually watched it for 31 Days of Horror last year, and I just decided to watch something else because I'm like, I didn't want to talk about it. So I'm not going to talk about it here. And he has 2 upcoming films that, again, I probably, when I look at the titles, I'm totally interested. One's called The Vampire, and it's a loose reimagining, apparently, of Nosferatu, I think. And then also one called The Northman, which is stars Alexander Skarsgård, and is set in Norway. And I'm like, of course I'm going to watch those. And I'm going to probably feel the same way I did about these. And actually, I enjoyed The Lighthouse more than The Witch by far, but it is dark and menacing and unnerving and tension, but the acting is so good. Like, my goodness gracious, like, the acting is so good. And there's one scene with Willem Dafoe for me that made it worth the entire watch. Like, he was just so compelling. I just could not take my eyes off the screen. Like, I was in this movie. When I was watching it, I was in it. The sound design is great. It's unnerving. I love that it's in black and white. There's not a lot of explaining bits of what's going on, like, in terms of, it doesn't hold your hand at all. It just feels like you're a fly on the wall watching these 2 men not really find their feet in terms of what they're doing, and then just it cascades into, like, and Robert Pattinson is also really good in this. I feel like people don't give him enough credit. I think he is a good actor, and they were real, like, the tension between them, it's just, and like you're always trying to figure out what's going on and what their story is, and just, but I never that being said, all of that questioning, it wasn't one of those situations where I was questioning someone's motivations. So that shows, good acting and also good writing, So I didn't feel like I had the full story a lot of the time, but I didn't feel confused in the sense that what I was seeing didn't make sense. I felt intrigued. So overall, I didn't enjoy it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I don't tend to give things 4 stars unless I liked it. This one, I don't know. I don't know if it was just that it was so dark. I don't know. Anyway, that's why I decided to give it. That's the highest rating I can give without liking it, but I was glad that I watched it. It ended up popping up on Prime, and then here in Toronto it was also on Hoopla, but I ended up watching it on Prime. Let me know, do you want to know how I ended up seeing stuff? Because where it's available in Canada or maybe Toronto is so local that I don't always feel like it's worth mentioning. So let me know if that's helpful or not, because I always feel like if I watch something on Prime, I have to preface it by saying in Canada because we don't always get all the same stuff. Anyway, I am glad that I watched this. I was happy that it was available to watch on a streaming service. It was super creepy. I had all of the lights off. I was completely engaged, but it also was disturbing. If you have anything that disturbs you, probably check the warnings. I don't tend to talk about that too much because there's very few things that I won't watch. So it's not something on my radar, but I imagine there's swearing in this. There was definitely violence. And also thematically, it's sometimes. So let me know if you've seen The Lighthouse. Because I am glad that I watched it, but it's not necessarily one it's not one I can highly or widely recommend. I think I can highly recommend it to people who are interested in dark stuff or art house stuff. It is art house, without question. So if you like art house, it is art house. It is definitively art house in my opinion. I don't know. Is it? I don't know. If you've seen it, do you consider it art house? I do, just because it's stylistically so gorgeous, and I do think the tension was great. It really was great. Might have been a touch long, but I think, again, that's a choice. So anyway, on to the next thing, which was a bit lighter, even though it was still dark. Down a Dark Hall. This is, it's not a great, there we go. Down a Dark Hall. So this is based on a novel by Lois Duncan. I read it back when I was in junior high or middle school. I can't remember. I think anyway, it doesn't matter. So I read this back in the day, and the adaptation has been in works for quite a while. When I looked this up on Letterboxd, it has it as 2018, but it came onto Netflix this year, so I don't know if this ended up being released elsewhere or not. So I'm not sure. So this is I guess technically speaking, this would be dark academia. It follows a young girl, a high schooler who there's a lot of sort of not weird stuff, but stuff happens around her. She gets blamed for it, and then there is an offering of her to be able to go to this exclusive school, and it is, way the heck in nowhere, and there's a couple other girls who are also students, but not very many, and they all seem to have a bit of, I wouldn't say dark past, but maybe. And then there's just all of them have something that's just a bit, I don't know what the right way to describe it is, actually, to be honest. So 5 of them, big house. Uma Thurman is the woman who runs the school, and, house is kind of creepy, strange things start to happen. It's a weird, it was good. This ended up being our Halloween pick this year, and we try and pick something that's scary but not too scary, and this actually fit the bill quite well, because I did find that there were scary moments and I was but it wasn't super menacing or any of that kind of stuff. I think it is mostly geared to more of a teen audience, given that it's based on a YA book. I would say at the time it was a teen book. There wasn't YA then. And I enjoyed it actually quite a lot. So it wasn't, in comparison, it's funny because I gave both this and The Lighthouse 3.5 stars, but no heart. But I feel completely differently about them. This one was a fun, enjoyable, scary, but not too scary, bunch of girls, and creepy house kind of situation. And then Lighthouse was like totally menacing, off its rails, had no idea what was going to happen next, but they ended up getting the same rating. It's very strange. So this is now on Netflix here in Canada, so that's where I ended up watching it. It ended up popping up, I think, in the summer at some point. So I'm really happy that I got the opportunity to watch it, especially with my sisters and my brother-in-law. So that was a lot of fun for a lighter Halloween watch. And then I did, throughout the month, I did watch some more classic horror movies, including The Mummy. And I actually do have the, what are these? The Universal Legacy collection. I have The Mummy as well as the Dracula one. So this actually has The Mummy and then other movies. The Mummy's Hand, The Mummy's Tomb, The Mummy's Ghost, The Mummy's Curse, and Mummy Dearest, a horror tradition unearthed. So, but I ended up just watching The Mummy. I thought I would end up watching all of them. I did not. I just watched The Mummy. It was a rewatch for me. It stars Boris Karloff, and I'll show some photos from it. Like the makeup was pretty amazing, and then the costuming, that costume was pretty spectacular. But I will have to say that this is one movie now. Now this movie is like, what is it, 88 years old? One of the challenges with films like this is, like, now I look at it and I'm kind of like, I don't know, this is not feeling very culturally appropriate kind of stuff, which, we're a lot wiser many years later. However, there was a Mummy reboot just a couple years ago, and I started watching it, and I was like, actually, no, I'm not going to watch this. I wasn't comfortable with the representation, so I couldn't do it. Now with this, again, it's from 1932, so we've come a long way since then, and it was a rewatch. I actually thought the story was pretty good. I actually thought the female lead in this felt so unexpectedly independent, and I loved that. Which also is kind of sad to find that be surprising. I don't know. Anyway, but, so I felt like, this was another 3.5 stars, no heart situation. So, because I think it's also a classic, and there are amazing things that it did in the film, especially in the makeup and the costume, the makeup and the costume, but I didn't feel necessarily comfortable with some of the stuff in it. And that happens when you're watching things that are many years gone by. I also watched a couple of movies from my 50 classic, what is it called? Classic Features, 50 horror classics. And I got this years ago. I have a science fiction one as well, and I tried to watch the whole thing in 1 year. I only watched 42 of them. And with this one, I think I'm actually around the same place. So I watched a couple from this. These are actually this is from Mill Creek Entertainment, and I think a lot of them are available through the public domain. So I watched Dead Men Walk from 1943. This was actually like a vampire story, which I wasn't expecting. I thought I don't know, the title kind of shares that. I thought it might be more experiment or trickery kind of thing, but it's more of a vampire story. I had to watch it a couple times. I was really tired, so I kept on falling asleep, and but I ended up, like, it was fine. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I don't have strong memories of it one way or the other. It was mostly had like 1 or 2 settings, and like it wasn't really super anything to write home about. And then I also watched The Mad Monster, which is from 1942. This one I only gave 2.5 stars. This one was more of so this one was more of like a werewolf one, but more of a like sort of mad scientist one. And there were some really strange scenes in this one. Like there was one scene where the scientist was talking to his previous, kind of felt like he was talking to a panel of people that he used to work with, but it was like a discussion that he was having with himself and pretending they were there, but then they appeared there as floating heads, and I'm like, is he actually talking? Like, are we supposed to think that he's somehow communicating to them, or is he just like, talking out loud, telling them he knows better and look what he's done and he's so successful now, or he's gonna get this experiment right? Like, it was just strange. It was just strange. So, and this one also, like, the monster character, like, the representation of, I'm not sure who he was. He was he felt like he was the groundskeeper, and I'm not sure, like, what his background was supposed to be, but it was uncomfortable. And it was also seemed like he was just simply being used for this experiment, which also was uncomfortable. So not a lot of wins in that set, unfortunately. And I did have some rewatches because, like, it's kind of, I do like rewatching movies, but it kind of freaks me out that sometimes, I don't know if I'm just harsher now when I watch stuff than I used to be, or I don't pick things as well, or I don't watch as much, because, like, some of these were okay, some of these were enjoyable, some of these were spectacular, but I didn't, like, enjoy, quote, them, so I felt like all of my ratings are pretty low, and then I look back to all of the ones that I rewatched, and all of them I gave 5 stars and hearts, and I'm like, am I just, like, more jaded than I used to be, or do I only rewatch movies I really love? I don't know. It is a weird thing. I also feel like that with books, that I very, very rarely give anything 5 stars on a first read, or, like, this year I probably give, like, maybe 4 or something, like, I'm nearing 300, so maybe more like 10. I don't know. Anyway, so the movies that I watched that I loved were Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. I just love it. And watch the extended edition too, which I don't always watch, so it was longer. And I did notice most of the extended moments, but as with other series that have multiple editions, it's usually just the first film where I notice all of the different moments. But I love it. I love it. It's so funny because it's so quotable, and now we see it, like, through the memes, especially, like, one does not walk into, like, there's, like, especially Sean Bean. Oh, Sean Bean. So anyway, watch this, love this. What more are you gonna say about Lord of the Rings? Like, it's, I love it. And then also Halloween rewatch, always Constantine with Keanu. It's a tradition. Love watching Constantine. I remember it being such a surprise at the time. I think it was the first time I enjoyed something, and I didn't know at the time the term urban fantasy, but this really is urban fantasy, and it's now my favorite genre, so especially for reading. So, and this is based on comics. Although I read Hellblazer, I'm not sure how all of that works, and there's always, like, reboots and stuff, so I find it confusing. But this was my first, and then there was the TV series as well, but this was my first ever, like entry to anything in the Constantine Hellblazer situation, and I loved it. I saw it in the theater. I loved it instantly. Keanu's great as this character. He just has this way of being, sort of he's the character is quite a bit of a jerk, but he doesn't seem malicious. So, and he isn't malicious, but he's just kind of indifferent in a lot of ways, but not. I don't know. He's got quite a chip on his shoulder, but I love it. I also love Tilda Swinton in this, like, fierce, and I always enjoy. And I think it's the first thing I saw Peter Stormare in. He's fabulous. So Constantine, 5 out of 5, love it every time. And then one that, like, always love, which was another Keanu movie, The Matrix. And I haven't watched The Matrix for a long time, but it was really interesting to rewatch it, and it's another up with the Bourne Identity, which I mentioned in my Friday reads, jumping videos. But the Bourne Identity and The Matrix are 2 films that I have seen, like, they're in my top 10 repeat watches, and this is one that I know very, very, very well. And I love it. I still love it. Loved it at the time, loved it now. It's iconic. It is in, a class all its own. And I have no idea what's going on. Or I remember hearing that they're doing another one, but that was pre-COVID. I don't know what's going on now. So curious about that. Unfortunately, the sequels, of course, are not great. I think I might only have seen them one each, one time each, but the original Matrix is still aces. So anyway, those are the films that I watched this past little while, mostly in October. I always think I want to, like, last year I did do 31 Days of Horror, and if you are interested in that, I did a playlist, I'll link it up above. I did release those videos out into the wild yet again, but I always want to watch more horror films in October, but it also is the time when the new TV comes back. TV returns at the end of September and all throughout October. And I watch via antenna, so I watch things live, so that sort of takes precedence. And so I usually fail at trying to watch horror movies. But I got a few in. 5. That's not too bad. Lighthouse, I think, was September, but, you know. Anyway, they are a bit all over the place. Let me know, have you seen anything good recently? Also, let me know, do you want to know what services that I watch stuff on? Is that helpful or at all? Because if it's not helpful, I just won't mention it, and everyone can search their own thing, and, you know, because we don't have access to all the same stuff anyway. But if it is helpful, I'm more than happy to do it. And yeah, so that's it for me. I will be back soon in another video. I hope that you watched some good movies or films recently. Out of these 5, which do you think? I would say there's one film out of those 5, out of the 5 the new watches. That's not what it's called. What was it called? The Mad Monster, The Mummy, Dead Men Walk, Down a Dark Hall, and The Lighthouse. I say there's one film, 4 movies. Which one do you think is the film? All right. I'll get the snobbery aside, and I'll be back soon with another video. Thanks for watching.